Welcome to episode 178 of the Confidence Through Health podcast, where I had the pleasure of speaking with David Watumull of AX3. And what we talk about is an antioxidant, a vibrant carotenoid that has been basically in nature forever, but has just recently in the last 20, 25 years been something that's been discovered and in being able to be used for its benefits, for its anti-inflammatory benefits, for longevity, for it's basically it's the greatest antioxidant that's been discovered to date. And so we talk about obviously how he came about working with this, which I think is a really cool story and a family tie to it. And, but then also, what's the purpose? How can we use it? How does it benefit us? Where does it benefit us? Right? Is it something that's targeted, like a lot of our pharmaceuticals are, or is it more of a general purpose and general benefit? And we talk about the science behind it. So we get a little bit into science, but you can hear his passion. You can understand the product. I very clearly understand the benefits and why it's something that we all should be using. And it's, as he details, the safety behind it that has been studied and rigorously peer reviewed. It's safe. It's, like I said, something that's in nature. And basically, he and his dad, if they ever figure out how to get it to us in a much quicker, simpler, easier to absorb format. So Astaxanthin is the antioxidant in what we talk about. And I think it's going to be a fascinating and helpful lesson for all of us to learn more about this product. So welcome, David, to the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I found you and it's really interesting because I think people that listen to my podcast and know me and follow me know that I'm looking for ways to be holistic in your health, ways to improve your health, but also ways to help with like your longevity. As we talked about before we started recording, is like, how can we live a healthier life long term? So tell us a little bit about what sparked your interest into getting into what you're doing, and how that all came about.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. And so, I'm super passionate about helping people live their best
Mm-hmm.
lives longer, health span, lifespan. But the story for me actually began back in high school. And I was working a summer job, and my father was also involved in a company on the Big Island of Hawaii that was growing microalgae. They had this cool technology to grow microalgae, which produces this naturally occurring molecule called astaxanthin, which is a super powerful antioxidant, has anti-inflammatory health benefits. And so I started with the production of that product about 25 years ago. And over the course of the next couple of years, we realized that while that ingredient or that molecule had these profound impacts on health, in nature, with salmon and other marine species, there were limitations with the production methods there, and so we transitioned to different ways of producing the molecule and optimize its delivery to the body. But at that time, there was less than 200 peer-reviewed papers with astaxanthin, and so there were some intriguing early hints on how it worked and the various health benefits. But we didn't really know exactly what it did in the body and all the different effects it could have. And so over the course of the last 25 years, there's been an explosion of research, and there's now more than 3,000 peer-reviewed papers on astaxanthin. So we have a much better understanding, and it's really, filled in those gaps in understanding. And like you said, with our passion and mission to help people, live longer, healthier lives, it's really underscored how astaxanthin can help to do that safely, because you want to be doing something that doesn't introduce other issues.
Right.
And so that's been a really exciting journey.
And so, and one of the things that and I'm looking at it on your website, you put the differences between naturally occurring and then the synthetic the way you're creating it. And that can scare a lot of people, right?
It definitely can. Yeah. I mean, that can be, a scary word. So technically it's called natural product total synthesis. And so you are creating from building blocks the exact naturally occurring molecule. So it's the nature identical from a chemical structure, chemical formula. It's the exact same thing, the same number of carbons and hydrogens and oxygens. And so from a chemical molecule standpoint, it is the same.
It's the same.
And there's been extensive safety testing done with the synthetic form. Very rigorous testing that normally you would do for drug development, for example, high dose, long-term toxicity studies. There's been a lot of studies both in cell culture, in animal models, and in humans with the synthetic form that have demonstrated benefits in terms of its mechanism of action and all the various effects on joints and heart and lifespan, et cetera. And so all this research has been done with both synthetic and natural forms. And so the way we think about it is astaxanthin, when it's in your body, when it's in your cells, is astaxanthin. And so if people, are comfortable with the natural form that can come from microalgae or krill, there's even a yeast that produces astaxanthin, that you could, I don't think there's any products on the market, but there are people looking into that. So ultimately, we think the whole society would be healthier if everyone took astaxanthin. And so it's the, there's a lot of people that could benefit from it, and whether they want to take the natural product, synthetic form, the microalgal form, krill form, we'd be happy if everyone is taking it. But we think where it really differentiates is how you produce it and how you deliver it to the body. And what we found with the microalgal production, which I literally worked in the ponds on the Big Island of Hawaii, in the sweltering heat and worked in that production. And it's tough because it can be prone to contamination. The consistency batch to batch can be compromised. You have a lot of energy, a lot of water, a lot of land utilization. So it's actually not the most environmentally sustainable. With natural product total synthesis, you kind of had the best of both worlds, where you're producing the molecule as you would be producing a pharmaceutical with very, very high rigor and purity. And it's actually more efficient from an environmental standpoint, less water, less energy, less land. And so if you're trying to service, a large market of basically humanity that could benefit from this, you want to do it in a way that is sustainable. And so in addition to the purity and the sustainability, the final benefit we have is increased bioavailability. And so people may or may not realize that just because you take a capsule of something doesn't mean it actually is absorbed into your body, into your blood, into your cells, into your tissues. And so that's a huge difference. And so we have a special formulation that really maximizes that absorption. And we did a head-to-head study versus a leading form of astaxanthin for microalgae. And we gave a group of volunteers a dose of the microalgal form, measured their blood levels over the course of a day, and then had them washed out for an entire week without taking any astaxanthin supplement or food containing astaxanthin. Then gave them our form, same dose, the exact same people a week later, again, measured their blood levels and got 3 times the amount of astaxanthin into the bloodstream. And so that's 3 times more from the same dose that goes into your body. And so it can have much more profound benefits. There's been dose-dependent responses in efficacy in various models in animals, humans, cell culture. So the more you get in, the better it can be. And also from a cost comparison, if you're trying to take a certain dose, of our form versus a say microalgal form, you have to buy 3 times as much. So those are really the differences. But again, at the same time, we really just want everyone to be taking astaxanthin, and we think there's room in the market for all the various forms. And I think it'll help to raise awareness, because the biggest issue is really no one knows about this. It's hard to say. It's something that, in the last couple of decades has been gaining interest in the scientific community. But outside of that, not a lot of people know about it. Maybe, certain health enthusiasts, people in Hawaii where there's been more marketing of these products, but a lot of people just don't know about it. And they may even think that all carotenoids, because this is part of the same family that say beta-Carotene or lutein or lycopene, are members of. And while they're all part of the same family, they have important differences. And so not every carotenoid is the same. Not every antioxidant is the same. So we think there's a big education process to make people aware of astaxanthin and its benefits, and then hopefully educate them and allow them to make a proper decision about which form they want to take.
So a couple of different things I want to touch on it. And so hopefully I can remember all of them and get back to them all.
Yeah,
so
let's go.
But, one of the things, in talking about the differences between the two, There's the microalgal form, and obviously, and that gets eaten by salmon, by other fish, right? And so we could, is that being traced down? Like, is the potency is obviously being affected, right? Like if we're saying, oh, well, we'll just get it from salmon, like your potency is going to be affected because it's got to be, it's going through the salmon first, and then you're only going to get so much through.
Yeah. So from a
right?
meal of salmon, there's different types of salmon, and just as background, astaxanthin is actually what makes salmon pink. So even though people may not have heard of astaxanthin, they have definitely consumed it if they've ever eaten salmon or lobster or crab or shrimp. I mean, the reason why all of these sea creatures are pink or red is because of astaxanthin, which is this natural pigment that also happens to fight off free radicals, oxidative stress, and inflammation. And so, say in a meal with salmon, some salmon might be more red and have more astaxanthin, and so you could consume a salmon meal that has several milligrams of astaxanthin, maybe 5 to 8 milligrams, or if it's a particular version that has less astaxanthin, maybe it's a couple milligrams. But for comparison, our capsule has 12 milligrams, and we recommend 2 a day. And some people even take more than that. And because of the safety, people can figure out what works best for them, work with their healthcare professional, and dial in the dose. And so consuming that much salmon would be challenging on a regular basis. And apart from that, eating large amounts of shrimp or lobster or crab is probably not feasible. And people are not eating microalgae, and it really is only produced at the microalgal level. It then is consumed up the whole food chain. And interestingly, with salmon, it's actually not only making them pink and helping them with their health and vitality throughout life, but it's really the key nutrient that allows them to swim upstream to spawn. And they have this amazing journey where they may swim, hundreds or thousands of miles, and they go back to where they were born. To reproduce. And as they go up this journey, it's like this ultra marathon, where, as you'd probably be able to relate to in ways. And so they are basically loading up on everything they can before this journey. And throughout this journey, they're essentially wasting away without eating, and they're relying on the stores that they have internally. And so it really is what allows them to swim upstream. And so without astaxanthin, salmon would not only not be pink, they would be gray. They would be smaller, they'd be weaker, they'd be prone to more infections, and they would be too weak to swim upstream. And so really the whole ability for salmon to make it upstream to spawn is because of astaxanthin. And when they turn bright red, when they are going upstream and finally about to mate, that is because the astaxanthin in their flesh is transferring to their skin as kind of a sign of being ready to mate. And ultimately, it also transfers to their eggs, to the salmon eggs, which are red because of the astaxanthin, and presumably to help promote the health of the offspring. So it's a really interesting story in nature, and it's a part of the diet of many of the longest living sea creatures, like bowhead whales that eat large amounts of krill, and even dating back, through evolution with photosynthesis. Plants needed to create energy from the sun, but as a byproduct of that, there's these, free radicals and oxidative stress. And so the whole family of carotenoids actually evolved together with photosynthesis to help plants defend against the UV light from the sun. And then within the carotenoid family, there's been various different forms, and ultimately astaxanthin was kind of the apex version that seemed to be the optimal form. And so it's been a really interesting story about how, nature has designed astaxanthin to deal with these environmental stresses. This is something that humans, we cannot create this, to design something that does all these things, gets all these places, that would be impossible. So we're really, fortunate that nature has done this for us.
And so with that, and one of the other things you mentioned is that it helps basically. And one of the things that I try to tell people is think about your diet, your nutrition, your, what you consume as far as media, how you exercise, all that stuff is not necessarily like, oh, I'm trying to improve my cardiovascular health, or I'm trying to improve my, my bone health, or my, whatever it is. Like, each cell is a cell, and they need basically the same things. Like, they're going to take different things, but from a basic standpoint, they're going to operate off the same, they need oxygen, they need glucose, they need these different things, right? And if they don't get the right things, they're going to start to break down. And it sounds like, from what you said earlier, like Astaxanthin can be something that every cell needs and can work off of and help. And so it's going to help every system in your body. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so a lot of people think, like you said, that, oh, my joint issue, my heart issue, my brain issue are different things. And so it's a different way of treating them, or, maintaining the health of these various different organs or systems. But at the fundamental level, they're all the same, and so these are, if you have a brain issue, heart issue, joint issue, these are typically manifestations of a common denominator that's happening just in a different place. Right. And so astaxanthin is, absorbed orally, it gets into your blood, and then it's distributed throughout your whole body and gets into cells in all of your tissues. So whether it's your liver or your heart, or it crosses the blood-brain barrier, gets into your brain, it gets into all these key, tissues and organs, and then gets into the cells. And not only does it just get into the cell, it gets into all the membranes of the cell. So the outer plasma membrane of the cell gets into the nuclear membrane of the cell, where the DNA is, and also into the mitochondrial membranes. And so those are the little energy power plants of the cells. And so, like you said, your body, you're breathing in oxygen, and that's part of what creates energy. With mitochondria, they use that as an input, that is a byproduct of that energy production with oxygen and nutrients. There are these oxygen free radicals that are created. And your body has endogenous antioxidants to deal with these free radicals. But over time, as we age, as we deal with environmental factors, or obesity, or smoking, or infections, injury, all these things lead to a ramp up of these free radicals, which creates this oxidative stress environment in the cell, say at the mitochondrial level, that leads to mitochondrial dysfunction, and triggers inflammatory processes. And so it's at this core site that if you can help to mitigate that oxidative stress and this kind of triggering of these inflammatory pathways, you can prevent these downstream manifestations of various things. And so it's really kind of focusing on the core and maintaining and restoring cellular health and homeostasis, and just allowing your body to function normally. So a lot of things go in and try to do things in ways that are not natural. Something's out of whack, let's inhibit that completely. That's not how the body was meant to function. So let's go back and just allow your body to get back to normal functioning, normal levels of oxidative stress and inflammation, because you need inflammation to fight off infections and wound heal. And so you need it to function, but just not be out of control.
Well, and that brings me to, inflammaging, which is a word that's getting more and more, it's more and more of a buzzword in the health community, especially. And that, that's inflammation causing aging early, basically. Like, that's the way I look at it, is like, you've got so much inflammation, you're just aging rapidly for what you should from a chronological standpoint. And so is astaxanthin something that can come in and like put a stop to that? If you're willing to change the other things that are obviously causing, right? Like if your inflammaging is coming from the fact that you're an alcoholic and you're smoking and you're doing all these things that are damaging your cells, if you don't stop those, it's not just, you've got to make the change. But can it also come in and say, okay, well, let's try and revert some of the damage you've already done? Yeah.
So inflammaging is a core hallmark of aging, and itself, and also drives many other hallmarks of aging. And it's kind of this interplay between aging causing inflammation, but inflammation also causing aging. And aging as defined as both the aging of your body, but also age-related health. So cardiovascular health, brain health, joint health. And so it's this kind of feedback loop. And astaxanthin can get into the cells and get into the places where the inflammatory pathways are triggered. And so with inflammation, you'll have this chronic low level of inflammation that's this slow burn, that's ongoing for years and decades. And so astaxanthin can help to prevent that chronic inflammation that leads to aging and age-related health issues by being there at its source. Other anti-inflammatories typically work downstream, going after various cytokines, but they're not dealing with the actual problem at its root, at its source. And so with astaxanthin, by getting rid of the oxidative stress that can pathologically set off these inflammatory pathways, that's how you're dealing, with mitigating the inflammatory issues that can happen as you age. And the other key aspect of this is you need something that's safe enough. Other anti-inflammatories, they may be very effective at reducing a certain type of inflammation, which is not, again, how nature would want it in terms of reducing inflammation, but they also cause a lot of safety issues. They have black box warnings, heart issues, liver issues, et cetera. And so if you're going to try to take something chronically to deal with your long-term health and kind of fight inflammation, you want something that's safe enough to take every day. And so that's kind of the key benefit with astaxanthin, is that you have something that fights oxidative stress and inflammation, but with exceptional safety. So you really need those two things hand in hand.
And even though it's not something that our body creates on its own, it's something that our body can handle at, is there a limit to okay, you don't want to go above this much as far as what's in your bloodstream, or is it, is it one of those things that it's like, to get to that point is going to be ridiculous and you're never going to get there, so you're safe?
Yeah, there have been no dose limiting toxicity or safety issues in human clinical studies or in reports from the human supplementation of astaxanthin over the last 20 or so years that there have been astaxanthin products on the market. Even in animal studies, high dose toxicity studies, there's been nothing of clinical significance that would translate to human safety concerns. One of the things that you'll see is the fat tissue will be colored and pigmented because of the astaxanthin, internally. Or one thing that can happen, which we don't view as a safety concern, but it is an effect that happens, is just like eating a meal that's very colorful, like with beets, for example, it can pigment or color stool. Just because it's so highly pigmented. If you open up one of our capsules and you put it in a glass of water, it'll turn bright red, like Kool-Aid or something, So it's highly pigmented. And so even if, you are absorbing a lot of it, if some passes through, it can color the stool. It's not all the time, but it is something that is normal, and it can be reduced if you take the astaxanthin with a meal, especially a meal that has fats and healthy fats, avocado, nuts, olive oil, etc. That can really help to promote the absorption and reduce or eliminate any stool discoloration. So that's the thing that we've seen. But in terms of the animal levels that have been tested, we've looked at high dose long-term studies that are the equivalent of if you were just taking bottles of this every day, for example. And so these are, thousands of milligrams or grams per kilogram of body weight in various animal species. In humans, we're taking a fraction of a milligram per kilogram. And so it's just orders of magnitude different. And so we really don't see any dose limiting toxicity. And so we think this is something that, and it makes sense because of how it works. It's not going in and chronically inhibiting anything. It's something that gets into your cells and is there somewhat as a safety net to help deal with excess free radicals and oxidative stress, but still allowing your cells to function normally. And so, for example, even though we've had these profound impacts on inflammation, there's been actually reduced infections, whereas a lot of anti-inflammatories make you susceptible to infection, and so this actually allows your immune system to function better and function normally and still fight off infections and things, but without having the unwanted chronic type of inflammation. So because of how it works, it really makes sense why it's safe enough. It's kind of there as a safeguard, but not doing things in an otherwise healthy state.
Right. Well, and that's, from what it sounds, the way you've described it, that makes total sense, because if astaxanthin is going into the cells and helping the cells be, stronger, healthier, take care of filtering the things it needs to filter and do its job better, then it should decrease inflammation, which if it's going to do that, then it's going to allow the immune system to stop dealing with the inflammation and go deal with everything else. Because I know that's one of the things that people that have, especially chronic pain, chronic issues, and they're in stress, they're sending their body from an immune system standpoint into such a high alert all the time. And it's putting out so many fires in so many different directions that it's just overwhelmed. And so if we can make the cells healthier, which is what I totally try and do with everybody that I coach and work with, is whether it's a nutrition or adding a supplement to what they're already doing, or getting their exercise keyed in so they're not overtraining or undertraining, or that we get the cells healthy, then everything else will start to come into balance, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it is a holistic approach. You want to have the right diet, and you want to have exercise, you want to have sleep, you want to have mindfulness. And so you want to take all these approaches, like you said, but as we age, our bodies, still sometimes need a little help. And that's where with Astaxanthin, I think there are certain foundational supplements, maybe, a multivitamin or an omega-3, a probiotic. We think Astaxanthin is part of that foundational, regimen that everyone can benefit from, and together with a healthy diet and lifestyle. And then, like you said, if you're healthy at the core, at the roots, then the branches, the leaves, everything else will be much healthier. And so we think that's really the way to approach this. And it's really a much more proactive way than, what traditional medicine has been, where, you're basically monitoring and checking and waiting for things to happen. And then the doctor will prescribe you, looks like your blood pressure is up, let's get you on the blood pressure med. Your cholesterol's up, let's get you on, the cholesterol med. And so it's waiting for things to happen, and then, treating them with different things, thinking of these as unrelated problems. And so not only are they unrelated, but it's much easier to stay healthy than it is to try to clean up a mess after it's already happened.
Right. Exactly. Because of that, though, there's not like if somebody starts taking it, they're gonna you're gonna feel a difference in a week, you're gonna feel a difference in 2 weeks, or you'll probably, I'm assuming you're gonna start to feel a difference, but it's going to be different for everybody. And, it may be 6 months before you go, oh, okay, now I really know that this is working. Because I would imagine, like with most things that are changing to where you're changing at the cellular level, it's not going to make a massive difference in one day. It's that compounding day after day of staying with it. Right.
Well, I think everyone will benefit over the long term. And so this is something that can help health span and lifespan. And so, you will find benefit throughout life, hopefully living longer and healthier. But with that said, like you said, everyone does experience this differently based on their own internal, systems and what's happening in terms of their own oxidative stress, inflammation, and what they're dealing with, what they're trying to accomplish, and where they're at in terms of their overall health. We've had a lot of people who have experienced benefits quickly in terms of joint and muscle health, or cognitive health, where they feel more clear-minded, or they feel more energy, or they feel like their joints and muscles are feeling better. And those are things that some people report benefits within the first few days, but that is not something that is the norm, or that we guarantee. But certainly people, if they have something that they're dealing with, Astaxanthin has given people benefits rapidly, within the first few days. But typically we say, let's give it a month or 3 months or 6 months to really assess how you're feeling. And to even you can look at things, not just how you feel, how you sleep, and how your joints and muscles are feeling, how you're recovering from exercise, how you're performing in exercise. You can also look at blood tests. We've done clinical studies looking at cardiovascular health, where we've demonstrated reductions over, say, 12 weeks in LDL cholesterol, oxidized LDL cholesterol, which is the really, really bad form of LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, blood pressure, HSCRP, which is a measure of inflammation. So these are all things that you can easily measure. Typically, you would do it with your doctor, with your routine checkups. And so this is something that, say, every 3, 6, 12 months that you're going in for a routine exam, you can see how those levels are. So that's another way of looking at it. And whether you're looking at the blood test, or you're looking at your own experience and how you're feeling, you can adjust your dose and then see, say, after another 8 or 12 or 16 weeks, how did this dose seem to affect it? And then you can kind of go up and down. Some people have cycled off the product as well, and then realize, oh my gosh, I feel worse. Yeah, I
Right.
didn't realize how good I was feeling because it's
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about it. I'm just living my life
Right.
and everything's good. And then
Yeah.
I went off it for some reason. I forgot to take it or went on a trip or whatever and got out of the habit of taking it, every morning, every night, say.
Yeah.
And then they realize, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling great, and then start taking it again, and then feel better. So there's a
Right.
variety of ways, but we think this is something that promotes long-term health, and is supported so strongly with all the scientific studies. And then if you feel better, every day and everything, that's like the added benefit, because
Right.
you have your long-term health and your kind of real-time health.
Right. Well, and you mentioned recovery, and that's something that I think is, when we look at recovery, because you mentioned sleep before, like making sure that your sleep's all the different things that you're doing, and at the cellular level, that's really where I think like health comes from, is like if you're giving your cells time to rest and recover from whatever you put them through, right? If it was a stressful day, a hard day, you were involved in something where you were exposed to a lot of toxins, you ate horribly, whatever it was, you exercised more than you should have. Like if you don't give them time to recover, then now they're just like most of us have experienced at some point, we're behind the deadline and we got to catch up, and so we're burning the midnight oil or we're trying to do something else. But at the cellular level, we don't want that. And so this comes along and helps with that. But that to me then says, like, this is not just a huge benefit from like how I feel today, but the better I recover, the better I'm going to feel long term. And that's from a runner standpoint. One of the things that one of the top runners in the world right now is experimenting with a brand new, I say experimenting, he's been doing it for 4 or 5 years now, but training system where he's training and testing his recovery during his workouts. Like, how's my body recovering during this 2-minute break? And he's doing a blood test and checking, and if it's not in the right range, then he adds a minute or he adds 2 minutes or he backs off the pace on the next rep, or like, and so he's fluctuating real time based on how his body's recovering. And granted, that's an expense, and that's that not all of us can do or take the time to do, or all of that. But if we add something into our life that is going to help us, that's been scientifically proved to do it, that's going to help our cells recover, I mean, to me, it just makes complete sense and I agree with you. I think everybody should be doing this. It's some level, whatever levels they're comfortable with, but at some level, I think it's a needed molecule in our body.
For sure. Yeah. And like you said, so if you're recovering, you can have that compounding effect of being able to, whether it's push harder the next time or just get back out the next time and not put off the workout or the run for another day or two and get out of the habit because I'm not feeling it today. And so I think all these compounding effects of being able to recover properly are going to be immense when you play it out over months and years and decades.
And so to go back to like where we really started with everything is that, so we found out that it's in the microalgae, right? But so it's something that's obviously been there for ages, and science has just now caught up to it. Is that basically so it's not something that people need to fear as like, oh, this is some new contrived thing. It's like, it's been there forever. We've been consuming it at some way or some form or fashion at some level, especially if you're near a coast. It's been easier. But now it's like, now we're digging into and being able to understand, just because science has gotten better at being able to figure these things out, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so this is a molecule that has been present in nature for millions or billions of years throughout evolution with plants. Played a key role in the marine ecosystem, and it's prevalent in all the colored species that you see in the sea, and even out of the sea. Like flamingos are pink because of astaxanthin, because of their diet. And so it's found its way into a lot of places. It's just something that I think was just kind of an unfortunate accident that the humans weren't able to get this earlier into their diets and things, or be able to produce it themselves. But this is something that as nature intended, plants and microalgae were able to produce this. And we've seen the profound impacts on health that it's had in the natural environment. And like you said, most people have consumed it, to varying degrees through seafood diets. Research really started kicking off in the 1980s and 1990s. For instance, even with farm-raised salmon, which there's many reasons why you would prefer wild, salmon compared to farm-raised salmon.
Right.
Those salmon still need to consume astaxanthin to be pink and to be healthy, and to grow and not be prone to infection. And so astaxanthin is a key component of the farm-raised salmon. And in order for the FDA to approve, the farmers to add astaxanthin to their diet as one of the key nutrients, there had to be extensive toxicity studies. And these were the studies that I was referring to that are pharmaceutical development level types of safety studies, high dose, long-term studies that look at toxicity, even look at, reproduction and development for offsprings, some multiple generation types of studies, carcinogenicity. So all types of very, extensive, rigorous safety testing. And that is what allowed the FDA to feel comfortable that, yes, you can add this to the diet of the farm-raised salmon, knowing that humans are going to be consuming that salmon and other aquatic, and other animals as well. So the combination of how this evolved in nature, the presence in the human diet, the very high dose long-term toxicity studies, and countless other studies that have been done with astaxanthin, the fact that the supplement form has been on the market for more than 20 years. And so myself and my father were involved with this company on the Big Island of Hawaii, growing the microalgae. We and a company across the street from us were the two companies that were the first companies to bring an astaxanthin product to the market back in 1999 and 2000. And so those were the first two products on the market. And there have been others that have entered the market. Like I said, we have transitioned to the natural product photosynthesis method of production, and we're the only ones doing that. But ultimately, there have been supplements on the market for more than 20 years. And so there's been thousands of people who've been consuming this, and there's been dozens of human clinical studies. And with the more than 3,000 peer-reviewed papers, there's so much known about this molecule that I think that the safety is very well established. And so, again, we haven't found any dose-limiting toxicity. The main possible concern is stool discoloration, which can be mitigated with proper diet containing healthy fats when to take the product with a meal. But otherwise, there's been nothing to indicate safety concerns. And so it's not something where scientists in a lab did high throughput screening to look at impact on a particular target, and then let's design some molecule to do that and hope that it does that without killing you. And then if we can find that balance, then we're going to give it to you and just manage those side effects. And so this is completely different, and so it's naturally occurring, but it's made in that super rigorous way that you would say make pharmaceuticals. So we think it's really the best of both worlds.
No, it sounds like it. And to go to the stool thing, one of the things that it's funny because I had someone ask me this. We were on a family vacation and somebody asked me, they were, like, why is my stool green all of a sudden? And I was like, oh, well, you had too much sugar. Like something, whether it was the sodas or the cake or the whatever, and we celebrated a birthday and all this stuff. And so it's like, you overdid it. And they were like, really? I was like, oh yeah, thanks. Just like you said, and it's a great way for, just a complete side note, but when you mentioned beets and how they discolor it, I always tell people that's a great way to determine if you're constipated or not. Like if you're not sure, because you can still be going to the bathroom, but still be constipated in your gut because it's just not traveling through fast enough. And so eat some beets, and then when you see that come out, that'll tell you how long the travel time is. But to go back to, the fighting the infection piece, I think is huge, in the building the immunity piece, which in the past 3 years is become, a very big thing for most people to understand now, how important that is to keep your immune system strong and healthy. And while it's not going to prevent you from being sick for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
it's what helps you get over being sick quickly when you get exposed to it. And so I think those two things together, it just, to me, it's like, okay, why do we not know about this already? Why is it, other than the science, like, is it just, do we just need to help you get it out there? Is that basically it?
Yeah. I think it's just not everything can be known. At some
Right.
point, omega-3s were not known. And
Yeah.
so at some point, aspirin wasn't known. I mean, it's just things just, have to be not only discovered, but they have to be researched. They have to be talked
Mhm.
about. And especially now with so much content coming from all different directions, there's
Mhm.
just a lot of noise.
Right.
And there's other supplements that are out there that you may have misinformation, surrounding them. Certain companies may not follow FDA regulations, and with
Right.
dietary supplements, even if you have scientific studies in animals or even in humans demonstrating impacts on disease outcomes or pain or things like that, even if there are scientific studies showing those benefits, you can't market a dietary supplement for those purposes because
Right.
that is only reserved for approved drugs by
Yeah.
the FDA. So you'll find when we talk about our product, we talk about impacts on joint health, but we won't
Mhm.
ever talk about pain
Right.
because we can't market that under the FDA regulations. And even if we have consumers saying that in reviews, that's their own personal experience,
Sure.
and that's fine. And science, is very supportive in a lot of interesting ways. But we have to speak about it in a way that is in line with the FDA regulations and is not misleading because pharmaceuticals go through years of development and large scale
Mhm.
studies and very extensive studies to prove that they are efficacious for a particular
Right.
indication that the FDA scrutinizes over and ultimately approves or does not approve.
Right.
But you will find other supplements out there that may say reduces joint pain. And so
Mhm.
for an everyday consumer, they look at one supplement that says, oh, this can reduce my joint pain. Oh, and this one helps my joint health. Oh, okay, I'm going to take the one that's for my joint pain, not
Right.
realizing that company is kind of, stepping out of bounds and
Right.
kind of making claims that are not compliant. And so, we want this to be a sustainable product that, is within all the regulations of the FDA, but gets out into the general conversation, and dialogue around, healthy living, health span and lifespan. And I think it's really just this ongoing conversation that needs to happen. And I think
Yeah.
the more people dig into this, the more interesting and exciting it is. We presented
Yeah.
to thousands of healthcare professionals, whether it's MDs or doctors of osteopath or naturopath or, nurses or chiropractors or dentists. So many are super excited about the science, and they will, want samples and dig into all the studies and
Mhm.
try it themselves, try it with their patients and clients. And so it's something where the more you dig, the more you find, utility and interest in whatever may interest you. And so at the same time, it does require conversation because a lot of nuances in terms of, well, how is this different than other antioxidants or other carotenoids?
Right.
Like, for
Right.
example, there were studies showing that beta-carotene may not be the best for you. There was a Finnish smokers study that showed negative impacts with beta-carotene. And for a while, people thought, oh, antioxidants don't work or
Mhm.
carotenoids don't work.
Right.
But not every antioxidant is the same. And so we've done studies with a collaborator at Harvard that can look at how astaxanthin, say, versus beta-carotene gets into the cellular membranes. And because astaxanthin is a xanthophyll carotenoid and it has these oxygenated head groups with a hydroxyl and ketone group on its end rings,
Mhm.
it actually can stand and lock into the membrane and kind of anchor across the entire membrane and help to stabilize the cellular membrane, in addition to fighting off the free radicals,
Oh,
both
wow.
inside and outside of the membrane. Whereas, say, beta-carotene is not a xanthophyll carotenoid, it's a carotene, doesn't have the oxygenated head groups, and it'll get into the membrane, but it won't anchor in and kind of span it nicely across, and it'll just disrupt and perturb the membrane.
Right.
And so that membrane disruption, can lead to, potentially why it's not been as safe or efficacious
Mhm.
in the past. And so, or things like vitamin E or vitamin C. Vitamin C, is not lipophilic and doesn't
Right.
get into the cells and span the membranes in the same way. And so there's an education around not all antioxidants are the same. Not all carotenoids are the same. Not even all astaxanthin products are the same in terms of how you make them and deliver them.
Right.
But ultimately, when you're in the body, that's where it really matters. And while there are different isomeric forms of astaxanthin that are all naturally occurring, all have been shown to be safe and efficacious. There can be, discussion and confusion around, oh, well, should I have this isomeric form that's in the microalgae or this one that's in the shrimp or a mixture? And so in some cases of other molecules, a certain isomer can have a really profound impact on efficacy and safety. Mm-hmm. With astaxanthin, that does not appear to be the case. And we've done research with both single and mixture of isomer forms of the product, and we've shown utility there. And so we think that conversation around antioxidants and carotenoids is really important. Astaxanthin products is important. And then also even anti-inflammatories, because if we're talking about being anti-inflammatory, well, there's things like NSAIDs. Why wouldn't I take ibuprofen every day to fight inflammation if that's a common anti-inflammatory? And a lot of people don't even realize that it has a black box warning. That's not safe to take every day. Like certainly, if you would take it occasionally as needed, as prescribed, or as indicated on the bottle, that it has its place. But that's an acute setting. That's not meant to be a long-term thing to impact your longevity and your health outcomes. And so how you're reducing the inflammation, what the safety is, that has a really important consequence in this context. And so that's why we really need to have these conversations and get the word out there about astaxanthin.
Right. Well, and one of the things that short little story so I ran for Texas A&M in college, and I was hurt. I mean, when you're at that level, you get hurt in little pains here and there. But I tell my wife, I was like, for a whole year, like every day, I took 16 Advil every day, 4 Advil 4 times a day to max the pain so I could keep running. And at a point it was like, okay, it was until like I made it through to the summer that I was like, okay, I need to take a break. This is like, I need to figure out, am I just doing this from habit now? Mm-hmm. And like the pain's actually subsided or gone, whatever. It's like, and so I took a little break and I was like, okay, I can manage this now and be able to, but I had issues from that internally, for years that, and it wasn't until I really started looking at my health and like I said, I started digging into taking care of my cells and trying to help them recover and repair, that I can now start to go like, okay, I don't have to worry about those things popping up here and there if I do something, because I would have issues with my kidneys or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, I can point back to, I know that disrupted my systems and that disrupted how everything worked. And
yeah, because that's,
and I think a lot of
downstream.
people do that. A lot of people do that, unfortunately, and you get the immediate result that you're looking for because the pain's been blocked. But like we've talked about, you're not fixing the root cause, and you're not fixing the cells that need it. And really you're masking, because your immune system, your inflammation is still there. It's still dealing with it. It's just, you don't feel it as much.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, there's so many different analogies, but say you had a house with a faulty roof and it springs a leak in one place, and then you put a bucket over here. It's like, okay, maybe that deals with the problem, but your roof still sucks, right? And then now it starts leaking another place, and then you go there and do that, and it's flooding, and then it's creating other issues. It's like, well, why don't you just fix your roof, and so that's what we're trying to do here is not just put a Band-Aid on, but kind of address the root cause. Right.
Well, let me give you a chance to tell people how to get in touch with you. If they have questions, they want to find out more about the product, where do they go? Are you all on social that they can follow you along, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so we're on social, on Instagram at ax3.life. And we also have our website, ax3.life. So those are the two best places to learn more. And, we've talked a lot about science, here today, but we really want to empower people, to be their best selves longer and to age fearlessly. And so we want to build and inspire this community around, maximizing, your life, and health span. And so we'd like to have this vibrant community that is really engaged and excited about Astaxanthin, sharing it, with friends and family, and then sharing the success stories, and so like if,
Right.
If you're moving into your your next age group and running the 1500 and hopefully dominating there. I mean,
Right.
your success there. I mean, let's talk about that and share and inspire others. And so that's a huge part of what we're doing because we really want everyone to live longer, healthier lives, and that's what's really so rewarding here. And the science is what enables that.
Right.
And so hopefully, what people will find is yes, there's a lot of science, and they can learn so much, but at the same time, let's really inspire others and kind of create a community around what we're doing here.
Right. And that's awesome. And I think that is more beneficial sometimes than understanding the science, right? Is it just to know that other people are there and they're on your side and they're helping you. Yeah. And yes, the science backs everything up and that's great. But to know that like, okay, well, you know what, I can do it because they're doing it. And so,
we're in this together.
We find that community and build each other up. And I think that's great. And so whatever else I can do to help you get the word out, I'm here for you. I think it's a great product as far as like what you're doing, how it's being done, all of that stuff. So whatever else I can do, thankful that you're able to be a guest on the podcast. And I just want to say good luck to you.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.